Welcome to Will's World, your will overall, powered by Third Gen Physical Therapy and Sports Science Institute.
Good morning, good afternoon, good night, good evening, whenever you're listening. Thanks for listening, and we back. Hope everybody's been doing okay, man. I've been kind of busy of late. Hadn't had time to sit down and do a lot of potting. But with that being said, man, let's hop in today's episode. But before we get started, please like, share, subscribe, comment. Let us know what you think about the episode or the podcast, and let us know if you have any questions you want us to answer. In today's episode, we're going to discuss something that I get asked a lot about when it comes to you know finances and basically accruing a lot of different assets and stuff like that. So I kind of wanted to put it in the term of maybe like a theory almost, but it's my theory, or it's something that I've derived over time. And the title of this episode is "We Don't Want to Make Money, We Want to Have Freedom." Now, when I say that, it's probably going to be taken different ways, and that's cool. But there's a few aspects I want to cover within this talk. The first piece is, where would all the money go if we split every dollar evenly in the world? The second part is, what's a business mind? And the last part, you have to take care of the $1 like you take care of $1 million. Now, in the first part where I talk about where would all of the money go if we split every dollar evenly. The reason I like to start there is because I think that a lot of times when we're trying to move forward and trying to have some financial freedom of some kind, we tend to get locked on making the money, but we don't really focus on the mindset that has to occur. So if we split all this money, right, throughout the world, it's almost 85, 90% that the majority of it will go back to the people who had the most of it prior to. Now, the reason I say about 80, 85% is because of the fact that I feel like some people would take it and probably do some well with it, but a very small amount. And the reason for that is because a lot of us are not good shepherds of money anyway. So in essence, we look at it as something to have to spend on something. We don't look at it as something to have to grow it or to be able to invest in something or build something. Which is why when I get asked the question of, hey, what should I make coming out of school as a PT and so on and so forth, the one thing that I have to always go back to is create value. And what I'm really saying is be really good at what you do, right? If you really focus on the task at hand of being really good at what you do, then all the finances will come. It seems very cliche and so on, but it's true. Like if you're really good at what you do, then people will be coming to you to pay you for your skill. Now, with the split every dollar piece, right? In your family, at a smallest level, you have people who look at money in different aspects. And what I mean by that, you may have an auntie or uncle who buys everybody in the family gifts during Christmas time. And sometimes that aunt or uncle has a lot of funds, and that's what they do. Sometimes that aunt and uncle has no funds, and that's still what they do. You also have the person that's very tight fisted or stingy, as we like to call it, and they don't buy anything, right? They don't buy anything at all. They don't share a dollar unless it's their, people probably close to them, loved ones, but they're not wasteful. They're very frugal with their money. And then you have the ones that are very quiet with their money. They do what they do. They travel where they want to travel. They have the experience they want to have. Do those things, and then but they're always up to something. You look up and you like, oh my god, like they have this new piece of property, or wow, they're in this country, and they're not the ones that are very front facing in the sense of being seen or being in the front of everything. They're the ones that are very quiet. And then my last example is that you have the ones that are very loud, who are very front facing, who are very, out there. Every time they have money, they buy something to validate that and show that, right? Which is why the split every dollar deal evenly is a theory that really holds some weight. Because if you are a person that works to consume, right? You work, you make money, and then you consume whatever you want to consume, then your consumption is very important. Like how you consume what and what you consume. It's very important. Now, if you're a person that spends without having, right? That's very important. Like, what are you spending on? So if I don't have something, but I have the money, I have some money or access to some funding, whether it's credit card or loan, whatever. If I don't have it, but I'm spending it to build because I know doing this thing will get what I want out of it, that's a whole different conversation, right? And if you have the person that has the money who likes to just spend it, that's a whole different mindset. And then last but not least, the people who are very quiet, those are the ones that are very you got to kind of pay attention to because financially they operate at a little different level. And that's why a lot of times when you split all the funds evenly, it goes back to the people who had the most money to begin with because of how they operate or their actual perspective, how they approach their finances. And people say, well, I shouldn't have fun. No, do whatever you want to do. It's just the theory is that if you don't have a certain perspective on what it means to you to have financial freedom, then you're not going to be ever free. Now, that leads to the second part, and it's going to be I'm going to briefly touch on this part because I kind of covered it a little bit in the first part, which is a business mind. Everybody can have a business, but don't everybody have a business mind? For instance, you set a mission, you set a goal, set a culture when you create a business, right? And then as soon as things get hot, you opt to the thing that gets you the most money as quick as possible, right? But you don't look at it from a future standpoint of positioning. Like, how does this help me to be able to position myself to be able to take care of myself, right? And what I mean by that, you probably do really good at acquiring funds, working for someone, but you may not be a person that can run a business because when you're looking at a business, there are so many different facets. You're almost having to project so many things while trying to manage the income you have. Like even if you're grossing, let's say you're grossing 90,000 a year in a business, right? So 50% of that probably is going to go in your pocket, correct? You're going to pay yourself. And the other 50 you have to split out, between, marketing, utilities, whatever comes with owning the place, the insurance, your payroll, right? Now, the question is, how do I increase that next year and increase my gross, as well as being able to grow the business further? There are certain things that have to happen throughout the year. If you're not making, certain allowances for yourself in the sense of, trying to put things in place and having to hold on to a dollar a little bit tighter because you're trying to get this thing to go, then it's going to be very hard for you. So, in essence, having a business mind is being very forward thinking. A lot of people who do businesses, and this is from my perspective, we tend to copy. All right. Now, the thing that we don't realize is that if we got to the market late, we can copy all we want to. You're only going to have a certain share of the market. You're probably only going to be able to get about 10% of the market. Like, and you're not going to be able to hold it really. You're really going to be fighting tooth and nail to be able to acquire that because as soon as the market leader starts to impress upon their financial status, you're pretty much out of there. As soon as they incorporate what you do or find the talent, hire the talent to do what you do in their building, you're out of there. So a lot of times when big businesses are trying to get into a market, they're not trying to really get into a market. Let's say if we have a business that's great at furniture polish and one business that's great at dishwashing liquid, the dishwashing liquid business is not going to be able to get into the market of the furniture polish in any type of majority. They'll be get into the market a little bit. Or what they're trying to get the furniture polish business to really focus on the 10% of the market they're occupying. And as a result of doing that, they're able to basically do something else that's forward thinking that probably is in the realm of what furniture polish do, but they're just trying to grow their part of the actual business a little bit further a different way without the furniture polish people being aware of it. That's all they're doing. So when I see people who do a lot of training, what I mean by training, I don't mean just sports and skills like I know I mean like just workout, right? A lot of boot camps and stuff. So that's a very saturated market. So you're probably going to occupy 10% of it. So in order for you to be able to grow in that market, you have to be very different. And I mean different in like, oh, my work ethic. Nah, not your work ethic, it's your thinking. Like a lot of times we have a great idea, but we won't stick with the idea long enough, right? Because it's not fruitful immediately. Just don't give it a couple months, not making any money. Oh, bam, I need off of that. Like we don't look at the ideal as a way to be able to fold it into something else to another piece of the business. So when you talk about having a business mind, it's your operations, not the operator, it's the operations. How do you move the needle in your business by being able to project what's the next thing that needs to occur, or being able to set yourself up when something is finally visible to you, or someone is able to see what you do for a living and they see what you've created and say, wow, this person has really some equity in this. So a lot of people just don't have the business mind, which is why it's hard for them to run a business, but also hard for them to grow money. You know, very hard, right? Because the one thing about it is that when you're trying to grow money and you're getting that freedom, you can't money can't move you. Like you're working with the thought of these are the serve, these are the things, this is the ideal, this is the focus. This is how I can get to that next place, and it may not be the most lucrative deal initially. Um, And I think that's a big thing. So the last part before we get out of here, I'm gonna use an example of a book I read. And in this book, this gentleman he talked about how he was able to basically cash in millions on a TV show that he came up with. Right, and it's a very cool deal. So this part of the talk, we're talking about you have to take care of the first dollar like you would take care of the first $1,000,000. And I know that seems like, well, no, those are different. And not really. Like, so if I have my own money, right? And this person I'm talking about, the example I'm going to use, he had his own money. He had enough money to be able to create this TV show, right? Created, very awesome idea, betted on himself, marketed himself, used a lot of things that he had access to from the past. So he had already built up things and had figured out that this was probably the route to go eventually. So he already kind of put it in place. Wasn't making him any money doing so. Definitely didn't garner him any millions when he first created this thing. And then after he did that, he put so much money into the TV show. I think he had about 10 episodes at the time that he went through all his money out of his pocket. And the TV show did amazing, right? And then when he got done with that season, the company that he was basically filming through or using their platform sat down with him at the table and gave him millions. And then he went back and got what they should have paid him on the front end. So he really got up on them. The point I'm making is this: it wasn't the show doing just well. It was the plan he had in place prior to that when he got the show going and got somebody to believe in what he was trying to do, who gave him the opportunity, he just basically merged or transferred what he built prior to then to be able to get the show going off the ground. And it wasn't just the money, it was his actual star, his ability to be able to excite, promote, market prior to this. He already did it before at a smaller level. So although it didn't make him what he wanted to initially when he did it, he bet it on himself and the money he had. When with his business mind, he was able to take that first dollar and treat it like the $1,000,000 and say, "This is what's going to get me to where I'm trying to get to." So if you're not able to take the first dollar and look at the dollar and say, "Okay, this is what I want to do, but this is what I can do," and trying to figure out the most creative ways to be able to get from point A to point B, it's going to be very hard for you to grow that into what you're trying to grow into. It's going to take time. It's going to take some real focus to gain your freedom if you're always focusing on the money and not trying to focus on the process. Now, I know this talk today I had today, this pod wasn't for everybody. I just get asked this question so much, and people ask me, my thoughts on it, and I'm wanting to give you all a little bit of insight on my thoughts. Not saying my thoughts are right, it could be totally wrong, which is fine. I'm fine with that. I don't think there's one way to get to the top of the mountain either. You can go a whole different route and get there the same way. You know, get to the mountain, get to the top of the mountain also. So it's not that what I'm saying is Bible, but what I'm saying is I'm giving you perspective. Somebody asked me how I did what I did. These are pieces of how I did what I did. And I hope that whoever got to the point in this point in the episode, got something from it. And with that being said, I hope you have a blessed one. I'll catch you next one.